Hi, I'm Dr. Frank L. Holt, and a dozen years ago, in an article I wrote for the publication Popular Archaeology, I said that Ai Khanoum is the Pluto of Old World archaeology. It's time for me to complete that thought by taking you back to Bactria and the Kuiper Belt, the homes of Ai Khanoum and Pluto respectively, for a discussion of how archaeology imitates astrophysics. Let's start with discovery. Science without discovery is just wondering without results. Every scientist worth his or her degree wants to discover something new, something significant, something sought by others 2 steps behind with just a blank notebook instead of a Nobel Prize. Yes, discovery is the name of the game in science, signposted everywhere lest we forget. But not everyone is a fan. Take Ian Malcolm, for instance, that fussy fictional character in the movie Jurassic Park, who famously gripes, "What is so great about discovery? It is a violent, penetrative act that scars what it explores. What you call discovery, I call the rape of the natural world." Sure, live dinosaurs might be a bad idea, but not penicillin, plate tectonics, DNA, gravity, dark matter, or the Bactrian city of Ai Khanoum. Okay, that last one may seem out of place in this list, but archaeology and astrophysics sometimes share a remarkable record of discovery. Let's start with the wannabe planet, Pluto. Some years ago, I had the good fortune to meet Clyde Tombaugh, the man who discovered Pluto, hiding out at the edge of our solar system. Pluto was not one of those serendipitous discoveries like penicillin. Scientists had been searching for a ninth planet ever since the astronomers Percival Lowell and William H. Pickering predicted its existence based upon apparent perturbations in the motions of Uranus and Neptune. Something big, they surmised, was out there, making nearby worlds wobble in the wake of its gravitational field. They calculated as best they could the position and mass of this unknown planet X. The meticulous search among millions of distant specks of light seemed futile at first, until Clyde Tombaugh took up the challenge. In 1930, he finally spotted Planet X as a tiny smudge on photographs of the constellation Gemini. The new discovery needed a name, and many were considered until an 11-year-old schoolgirl in England suggested Pluto, the Roman equivalent of Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. The name was a winner among astronomy nerds everywhere, and for the next 76 glorious Earth years, that's about a third of a year on Pluto, it was acclaimed the outermost planet in our solar system, celebrated in song, enshrined on classroom posters, and the inspiration for the naming of Disney's cartoon dog Pluto and the element plutonium. But an Earth Day of Reckoning was on its way. Meanwhile, archaeology was on its own quest to discover a place long predicted to exist, but nearly impossible to find, like Pluto. Historians had a hunch that it had to be somewhere in rugged Afghanistan, the region of ancient Bactria. That's why modern explorers were searching for a Greek city on the outermost edge of the world as the Greeks knew it, far, far away from the Aegean homeland of Plato and Pythagoras. Archaeologists were guided by the missing city's telltale influence on the alien non-Greek world around it. If not for such a city, why else would Greek-style coins be found by the tens of thousands across Central and South Asia? Why would Greek art and literature have otherwise exerted such an obvious influence on ancient Indian culture? Generations of explorers wandered the wastelands of what once was Bactria, and many never walked out again. Finally, in utter frustration, one of them declared after a lifetime of searching that a lost Greek city in Afghanistan was nothing but a Bactrian mirage. Archaeology needed its equivalent of Clyde Tombaugh, and eventually the king of Afghanistan filled that role. The eureka moment came in 1961 when His Highness Mohammad Zahir Shah spotted this, the archaeological equivalent of a gray smudge on a photograph of deep space. The king recognized against a desolate background the signs of a civilization distant in time, with the outlines of an entire city bulging beneath a blanket of dirt. It was the city everyone had been searching for, with the Corinthian capital standing like a roadside marker, declaring, yes, the Greeks were here. So the mirage lifted, and there in the pages of Scientific American, right alongside articles on Mesozoic mass extinctions and the moons of Saturn, we find the remarkable discovery of an ancient Greek city at Ai Khanoum in Afghanistan, exactly as many had predicted. No one knew what to call the city, and years of excavation never revealed its ancient name. Some experts have guessed that it might have been named for Alexander the Great, or perhaps for Eucratides the Great, the last Greek king to govern there. In the end, however, archaeologists settled on its modern Uzbek name, Ai Khanoum, meaning Lady Moon, an ironic astronomical name, and, thanks to subsequent looting, an apt description of what's left of the site today. But archaeology and astrophysics never stay still because one discovery inevitably leads to another. It turned out that Pluto was not responsible at all for what was going on at the edge of our solar system because it was simply too small. The astronomical calculations that had led to the search and discovery of Pluto turned out to be wrong. It does not have the mass of its neighbor Neptune. It is actually much smaller than Earth. Heck, Pluto is even smaller than Earth's moon. With ongoing research, mathematics was shrinking the expected mass of Pluto, making it at best a tiny pygmy among the planets. As Pluto shrank, its environs became more and more interesting. In 1978, scientists discovered a large moon of Pluto and named it Charon, after the ferryman to Hades in Greek mythology. Astronomers kept identifying more moons plus other objects nearby, giving rise to the discovery of the Kuiper belt, orbiting alongside Pluto 5 billion miles from the Sun. With its diminutive dimensions, eccentric orbit, and icy remoteness, once mighty Pluto was moved to the planetary kiddie table and would eventually be banished from the banquet altogether when scientists redefined the rules for planethood. Yes, Pluto orbited a star. Yes, Pluto had sufficient gravity to make it spherical. But no, Pluto was not big enough to clear away nearby objects orbiting the Sun along with it. Failing that last requirement, Pluto flunked out of planetary school. Meanwhile, archaeologists on Earth began to reconsider what they were excavating at Ai Khanoum. The first thrill of discovery had hailed the city as a robust bastion of Hellenism, a fully developed Greek city plopped down onto the alien soil of Central Asia. Inside its massive walls were some impressive features, such as an enormous 20-acre palace and a treasury, plus a public theater. But as the digging continued, large areas within the city seemed empty, and people began to question the actual size and Greekness of its population. After all, compared to other Hellenistic cities, Alexandria in Egypt was nearly 9 times larger in area than Ai Khanoum. Antioch was 4.5 times larger, and Seleucia 5.5 times larger. Was Ai Khanoum therefore big enough to impact Bactrian India as profoundly as had been imagined? Archaeologists began to look around and discovered a growing number of interesting little Hellenistic sites surrounding the city, an archaeological equivalent of astronomy's Kuiper belt. Ai Khanoum even had its own moon, the satellite settlement sometimes called Little Ai Khanoum, located just a mile away. Little Ai Khanoum proved to be older than Ai Khanoum itself, raising the possibility that the latter was actually the satellite of the former, and that a lot of what was being discovered might be earlier Persian rather than Greek, such as regional irrigation systems. Gradually, the Greek character of Ai Khanoum came into question. justice for the planetary status of Pluto. Astrophysicists would not get a close-up look at Pluto and its neighborhood until the New Horizons spacecraft arrived there in 2015 with some of Clyde Tombaugh's ashes on board. In the meantime, poor little Pluto had lost its planetary status with a controversial vote of the International Astronomical Union in 2006. Protests erupted, and people called for a recount, but the vote was official by the planetary elite. As it fell from planetary status, Pluto threatened to take some scientists down with it. Villainized by school children worldwide, Neil deGrasse Tyson wrote a charming little book explaining his role in the demotion of Pluto. He even appeared on a popular American sitcom defending himself from the wrath of an angry physicist. Pundits and poets piled on. Scientists challenged scientists to a sort of solar system rumble. Winner gets the Pluto they want, planet or downsized dwarf. Even the politicians got involved. In 2007, New Mexico proclaimed Pluto a planet once more, following the lead of California a year earlier, when the state legislature there condemned what it called the mean-spirited International Astronomical Union's disrespect of Pluto. And in 2024, Arizona lawmakers reinstated Pluto as a fully fledged state-sanctioned planet with all the rights and privileges thereof. Meanwhile, just as scientists were redefining and reclassifying celestial bodies, archaeologists were doing the same with their artifactual evidence. New terminologies replaced the old. Monolithic cultural historical models gave way to more nuanced discussions of acculturation, habitus, and hybridity, with an increasing archaeological focus on non-elites and the countryside instead of just urban aristocrats. As a result, Ai Khanoum began to look different, and its classification as a Greek city weakened in light of its many non-Greek characteristics. Earlier pronouncements had been unequivocal, said its excavator Dr. Paul Bernard in 1967. Ai Khanoum was first of all a Greek city whose colonists strove to maintain the integrity of the civilization they had brought with them. But it turns out that a lot of that Greekness got left behind by the small colonial population at Ai Khanoum. The moral of the story, if you need one, is this. We tend to make what we find the very thing that we seek, at least at first. If you go looking for a planet beyond Neptune or a Greek city in Afghanistan, you're likely to find one sooner or later. The hard part is making sense of what you have really discovered. But that takes nothing away from the discoveries themselves, nor from the renown of those who made them. I'm Dr. Frank L. Holt, thanking you for watching this channel. Please take a nanosecond to like, subscribe, and share this content with others, and I'll see you here next time.